Hi. She started wearing brighter leggings about 6 months ago. Not that I was keeping a chart, but you notice these things when you've been married nearly a decade. They were the kind that catch your eye in the gym, form-fitting, vibrant colors, patterns you'd never wear to grab milk from the store. At first, I chalked it up to her finally sticking to the fitness plan she'd been talking about for years. And honestly, I wanted that for her. She'd always said she felt better when she was active. She'd come home flushed, hair pulled into a messy bun, a thin sheen of sweat across her forehead. Sometimes she'd even have that gym smell, rubber, fabric softener, and the faintest trace of eucalyptus from the yoga mats. But then, there were days she didn't come back sweaty. Her hair looked just a little too styled for someone who'd supposedly been pushing through squats and lunges. And her makeup, light, but present, hadn't melted off. I remember the first time I really noticed. She'd said she was heading to a late-night spin class, but when she came through the door 2 hours later, she had that glow, not the kind from exercise, but from something else, something warmer. Still, I didn't accuse. I've never been the guy who hurls baseless accusations. My dad taught me young that if you're going to say someone's betrayed you, you'd better have the truth in your hand like a brick. So I just watched. The gym trips got more frequent. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. And not just in the evenings, Saturday mornings, too. She'd always grab the same black duffel bag from the closet, kiss me on the cheek, and say, "Don't wait up." That phrase used to feel intimate. Now it felt like a lock clicking. One Tuesday night, I sat on the couch flipping through channels when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower. I didn't touch it. I knew better, but the preview on the screen caught my eye. Just a first name. A man's. No emoji, no context. The message read, "Same time tonight?" I told myself it could be a classmate from her yoga group. A harmless text. And yet, something about the casual certainty in it gnawed at me. The turning point came 2 weeks later. She mentioned a special class she'd signed up for, personal training with a friend. My gut tightened, and I made a decision I didn't know I was capable of. I waited until she left the driveway, counted to 30, and then grabbed my keys. My hands were sweating on the wheel before I even reached the first stop sign. I kept a full 2 car lengths behind, heart pounding, rehearsing what I'd say if she spotted me. She drove right past our gym. No turn signal. No hesitation. Straight through the intersection, down the road toward the part of town with little cafes, boutiques, and a certain apartment complex I recognized from a friend's failed house hunting trip. She pulled into the lot like she'd been there 100 times, swung her bag over her shoulder, and walked, not toward a fitness center, but toward the third building on the right. My eyes tracked her every step. She didn't even glance over her shoulder. Halfway up the steps, a man emerged from the doorway. Tall, athletic build. That easy kind of smile people wear when they're seeing someone they want to touch. She slowed, and his arms opened without a word. It wasn't a quick hug. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of embrace you give when you've been counting the hours until you can press your face into someone's neck. I didn't interrupt. I didn't call her name. I didn't do anything except raise my phone, frame the shot, and click. The sound of the shutter felt like thunder in my hand. Then I set the phone on the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove away before either of them even knew I'd been there. Driving home that night felt like moving through water. Thick, slow, muffled. Every traffic light seemed to hang on red just long enough for me to see her face in my mind, pressed against his shoulder. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because it was as if my body didn't know how anymore. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Same siding, same porch light humming faintly, but there was this weight to it, like it knew what I knew. I sat in the car until my legs started to cramp, staring at the front door we'd walked through together 1,000 times. Inside, I dropped my keys on the counter, poured a glass of water, and stood there in the kitchen, holding it without drinking. The photo was still on my phone. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. The image was burned into my mind like an afterimage from staring at the sun too long. I slept on the couch that night, not because she wasn't home. She didn't get back until almost midnight, but because I couldn't imagine sharing a bed with someone whose arms had been around another man just hours earlier. She came in quietly, thinking I was asleep. Her bag hit the floor with a dull thud, and I heard her tiptoe upstairs. 15 minutes later, the shower came on. I pictured her rinsing off the evening, washing away every trace of him before slipping under the covers. Over the next few days, I moved like a shadow through my own life. At work, I smiled and nodded at meetings, but I couldn't tell you a single thing we discussed. At home, I played the part, asked about her workouts, pretended to be impressed when she said she was upping her weights, even offered to cook dinner so she could rest. Meanwhile, every night, I sat at the dining room table after she went to bed, scrolling through my bank accounts, credit card statements, and email threads. Not looking for proof of infidelity anymore. I had that, but for leverage. I wasn't going to throw this at her in a shouting match. I wasn't going to become the man who yells in the kitchen while the neighbors pretend not to hear. I wanted control. I started transferring small amounts of money into an account she didn't know existed. Cleared old debts. Paused investments she might try to claim. I met with a lawyer under the pretense of updating my will. He didn't know the real reason, but he didn't need to. By the second week, I'd memorized the routine. Monday, Thursday, and Saturday were gym days. She'd leave around 6:15, return by 8:30, unless it was Saturday morning, when she came back closer to 10 o'clock. Always with that faint smell of cologne clinging to her clothes, masked under a too-quick spray of perfume. On Thursday, I followed her again. This time, I didn't stop at the parking lot. I parked 2 streets over, walked to the complex, and positioned myself behind a hedge. They didn't waste time. The moment she reached his door, he pulled her inside. I stood there for a few seconds, heart thudding in my ears, before I turned and left. The second photo stayed in my camera roll beside the first, like bookends to a story I hadn't agreed to star in. It's strange how quickly betrayal becomes part of the background noise. By the end of that month, I could pour her coffee in the morning, watch her stir in the sugar, and feel nothing. Not anger, not even sadness. Just an odd, heavy calm. I didn't know exactly when I'd confront her, or if I even would. But I knew one thing. When the moment came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be final. The morning it happened was almost painfully ordinary. She was standing at the counter, hair pulled into that same casual bun, scrolling her phone while sipping coffee. Her gym bag sat by the door. "Got your class tonight?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She smiled, genuine or good enough to pass, and said, "Yeah, late one. Don't wait up." I nodded, kissed her cheek, and left for work. But instead of heading to the office, I parked 2 blocks from the apartment complex and waited. I sat there for almost an hour before her car finally turned into the lot. Same parking space. Same building. I didn't follow her this time. I already had what I needed. Instead, I drove to a small print shop I'd found the week before. 10 minutes later, I walked out with an envelope containing 2 crisp photographs, the first hug, and the doorway pull from the second night. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. No fights, no scenes, just truth, delivered cleanly. She came back around 8:40, the faintest trace of someone else's cologne following her through the door. She kicked off her sneakers, tossed her bag aside, and gave me a quick, distracted hey before heading upstairs. I waited until I heard the water running. Then I took the envelope and set it on her pillow. No note, no explanation, just the evidence, lying where she'd have to face it alone. I didn't stick around to see her find it. I grabbed my overnight bag, already packed with clothes, documents, and the hard drive with all our financial records, and walked out the front door without locking it. 15 minutes later, I was halfway to the small cabin I'd rented under my name alone, phone buzzing in the passenger seat. First a call, then another, then a text. "Where are you? What is this? We need to talk." I didn't answer. I just turned the phone face down and kept driving. Some people think closure comes from confrontation, from shouting until your voice is gone. For me, it came from silence. From leaving her with the truth she could no longer dance around. That night, I sat on the porch of the cabin, listening to the wind move through the pines. No city noise, no gym bags, no cologne that wasn't mine. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt my chest loosen. Not because I'd won anything. There's no victory in betrayal, but because I'd finally walked away. And I knew, without a single doubt, that I wasn't going back. Bye-bye.